to This Week Betting UFC. I'm second half Chaz, and we have a great show for you today. We are talking UFC 202, the Diaz-McGregor rematch. They're calling it the rematch of the history of UFC. We're going to get some lines from CG Technologies. We're going to get some data from SureDog.com. If you haven't watched or looked at SureDog.com, listen to me. It's the best website for when you're with your girlfriend or your wife, because they give a round by round breakdown with no sound. Your wife won't even know you're watching UFC. We're going to use the tail of the tape. Now, the tail of the tape this week is sponsored by UFC.com Pick'em Contest. It's a fantasy contest. You can find out more at UFC.com. One thing that Daryl used to tell me, he said, Chaz, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find the people that know everything. So we want to give a shout out to our video guys. We want to give a shout out to both our experts today. And that's a great segue. So we're going to go right out now to Andrew, the Squid Montanez. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
All right. Squid, talk to me, because you mentioned one of the reasons you're helping us with the first three fights of the main card is you got a personal connection with the main event. Tell us your story.
I do. I'm pretty good friends with Nick Diaz, which is the older brother of Nate Diaz, and I don't know. It seems a little bit of a conflict. And after Nate beat Connor the first time, we all partied in LA for a couple of days. So it would seem wrong for me to, really give some analysis, because Connor's good. Connor can win this fight, but I don't really want to get too biased and, lose a friend or something.
Well, that's a great story. Now, let me ask you this. Biggest dog on the card is the first fight on the main card, Hamasi. He's plus 350. That means for every 100, you can win $350. But does he have a shot? Can he win the fight?
He can. Tim Means has had, not the best run in the UFC. He's kind of been a little... He's beat the guys he's supposed to beat, but every time he's supposed to fight, he fights someone that's a top 10 ranked opponent, he loses. So, this is another time where he's on a big card. He's fighting a guy, Hamasi, who's making his UFC debut. But Hamasi, I believe his record's 11-5, and almost all of his wins are by finish. So he's got a chance to finish Means. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Tim Means is going to get himself a win here. But I would probably think this fight could probably hit the over.
Squid, that's a great segue. The will go, won't goes are a big part of this week betting UFC. So many of our listeners and on our viewing audience, they don't even know how it works. All 5 of the will go, won't goes, which we call the totals, on this main card, they're all playable. There's no crazy odds. And on this fight, minus 125, that it'll go 1.5 rounds, is totally playable. Now, the next fight is the second biggest dog, Mike Perry, at plus 220. So for $100, you're going to win $220. But can he beat Lim?
He can. It's kind of weird to have, we have one of the biggest fight cards of the year, and the two guys on the main card, they're making their UFC debut. Mike Perry also making his UFC debut in this fight. He's 6-0 with 6 knockouts. So that's a little bit of a flag for me to keep an eye on that guy. And he's fighting Lim, who's lost 2 of his last 3. So I would probably bet the underdog on this. I'd probably bet Mike Perry if I was gonna bet. Squid, that UFC tail of the tape, sponsored by their Pick'em contest. So it's UFC.com Pick'em. It's a fantasy contest. It's showing that Perry is 6-0, all by TKOs or knockouts. So I'm thinking that's an opportunity for a wager on a prop bet for Perry on Saturday. Yeah, I would probably make that bet. He's 6-0. He hasn't fought the best of opponents, but the fight ended really, really fast. And I watched a little footage on him. He's got good striking. I think he can come in and overwhelm Lim. So that would probably be my bet, my go-to bet of the night. If I was going to make an underdog pick, I would go with Perry.
We're on the phone with Andrew the Squid Montanez. He's fought, he's trained, he's done a little bit of everything in the fight game. So we not only respect his opinion, but we appreciate his time. Now, no matter what the wager, it doesn't matter what the sport, at Sports Betting Weekly, we tell you the same thing. They're all opinions until you're either cashing or trashing. So looking at the Cerrone Story fight, Cerrone is a name I actually know. Been following UFC now for a couple of years with the show. Always appreciate that both you and Billy V can pronounce the names. Now, Billy V will be joining us in the next segment, and man, some of those names are tough to pronounce. Is Cerrone worth betting $160 to only win 100? Tell us, Squid.
He is actually. Cerrone gets the job done. The only thing that is a little wary about this fight is he's come up in weight class. He usually fights at 155 pounds, and this is his second fight at 170 pounds. He defeated Patrick Cote back in June by TKO, and Patrick Cote fought for the middleweight title a few years back. So, he went up in weight and finished Cote in the third. So I would definitely bet. I don't really believe in betting against Donald Cerrone. I believe he's won like 11 of his last 12 or something like that. So I would not bet against him. Rick Story won his last 3, but before that he had a win-loss thing going on for a while. So you don't bet against Cerrone.
Now, Squid, this is the first fight we've talked about tonight where the will go, won't go is 2.5 rounds. Now that's almost the entire fight. What do you think?
Well, I'm pretty sure it probably will go 2.5 rounds. Rick Story, he's not the best striker, and I foresee him trying to he's a wrestler, and wrestlers are usually the guys that will give you they will go. I foresee him trying to keep his distance, and just trying to hold down Cerrone and try to finish him. And Cerrone's got great cardio, but he's a little smaller, so I think he may get taken down. I think the fight, it's gonna go pretty long. I think Cerrone's gonna win, but it's gonna go, probably deep in the second, early third before we see someone really start getting hit.
All right, Squid, as always, we really appreciate your time. Have a great UFC weekend.
All right, thanks.
That was Anthony the Squid Montanez covering the first 3 fights of the main card Saturday, UFC 202. When we come back, Billy V's on the phone for the next 2 fights, including the main event. Welcome back to This Week Betting UFC. I'm second half Chaz. We've got on the line Billy Vickers. Billy, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's going to be a great line of fights this weekend.
All right, Billy, you're going to help us with your opinions on the last 2 fights of the night. We're going to start with Johnson, Teixeira. Johnson's the favorite, 50 cents on the dollar. So you got to bet 200 to win 100. Billy, is it free money?
Anything could happen in this fight, quite honestly. But I'll tell you, he brings hell in the first minute, and if he doesn't punch himself out, and Glover can, withstand that initial onslaught, I think Glover might have a chance of actually taking him out. But we'll see. We'll see.
Billy, the UFC Pick'em contest, tail of the tape, shows incredible records, but not many decisions. Does that impact how we should look at the will go, won't go on this fight?
Well, that's just the thing. These guys are 2 great fighters, and they might just feel each other out. But like I said, Anthony's going to bring it in the first round, and this might be one of those wars that just drags on all the way to decision. But it all depends on if Glover can take him on in that first round and sneak a punch in somewhere and make Anthony backpedal a little bit. He's really got to be ready for that first round. If he can get through that, this might turn into one of those wars that goes all 3 rounds.
Billy, you look at the picture from UFC.com, these guys are both 205, and they are built.
Yeah, and Glover's only had 12% of his fights go to decision. So there again, it might not happen in the beginning of the fight. I'm kind of leaning towards the later rounds. I think Glover's going to be able to withstand whatever Anthony Johnson wants to dish out in the first round. He's a very calculated, technical fighter. He uses all standards of the game. He's not considered a kickboxer or a wrestler he's a mixed martial artist. He does it all. And that's why Glover is given this opportunity to fight one of the top contenders in this weight.
All right, Billy, you know what's next because they say it on the pay-per-view. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for your main event. So they're calling this fight, Billy, the biggest rematch in UFC history.
Oh, for sure. Conor McGregor, he always draws a big crowd. He talked a lot of smack for the fight with Diaz, and he had a really good first round against Diaz. Everybody thought he was actually going to pull it off. And he got through the second round, and everyone forgot that Diaz actually took on George St. Pierre years ago, and they went all 5 rounds. And there are very few fighters that go all 5 rounds with George St. Pierre. And, that's kind of what Conor McGregor is going to have to do. He's going to have to go all 5 rounds and try and wear this Nate Diaz get out. Nate Diaz is an animal, and he's got a brick for a head. I'm not saying inside he's he's a smart, calculated fighter. He comes from good stock. He's got his brother that trains with him, and you can say what you want, but Diaz has ability to do this again.
Now, I'm not sure if these guys like each other, Billy, but I'm pretty sure they sure do handle things differently with the media.
Everything.
Well, that's for sure. But Diaz doesn't take much time off from the microphone. He does a couple of podcasts throughout the week, so he's always given his opinion on things. And he's very matter of fact. But Conor McGregor, he's earned his place in the UFC. He's really shown that in the lighter weight class where he's champion, that he belongs there, particularly with his knockout of Aldo. But it's going to be an interesting fight, and I think we're going to be looking at the over on this one. And I like Diaz. For some reason, I don't think McGregor's going to have enough to take this guy out.
Billy, the over on that fight, which will go 2.5 rounds, is even money. That means $100 gets you $100. The books are thinking it won't go 2.5 because that's minus 140. So if you want to collect the same $100 for your win, you got to hand the guys at the CG Technologies window $140. So, Billy, I'm asking you this. When we look at these fighters' records, 19-3 looks much better than 20-10, but does it matter?
Well, not when Conor McGregor is coming up, I think 1.5 weight class to do this fight, where he's champion in like the 145, I think. And for him to come up this much in weight, he better had put on a lot of weight and be able to use his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu and his hand speed, because I don't think he should try to stand with Diaz. I think he should try and go for, he thought it was going to be a boxing match that first time. They stood there and fought and traded, and he kind of punched himself out. Nate Diaz got him to the ground and took the easy way out. He didn't knock him out. He tapped him out with a rear naked choke. But Conor's definitely going to be ready for that this time around. He's going to be more wary of Diaz's ground game, which he obviously didn't respect in that first fight.
All right, Billy, before we let you go, it's a full card. Are there any other wagers you're thinking about on the matchup Saturday?
Every time I call in, I look for at least one fight that jumps out at me, like immediate, like, whoa, that's a little lopsided. And one of them that would look lopsided to bet is going to be the under on the Takeya Mizugaki fighting Cody Garbrandt. But yeah, Mizugaki's from Japan or over there, and he's going to be fighting over here against one of our best 9-0 fighters coming up through the ranks, is Cody Garbrandt, and I think it's plus 130 for the under on that one. And I think that's a very good bet.
There you go. 2 of our UFC experts representing the public and Sports Betting Weekly, filling us in on UFC 202 Saturday. That'll do it for this week. I'm Second Half Chaz. From all of us here at This Week Betting UFC, always be cashing.